3 Golden Eagles for War Thunder. Link in the description.
We're now experiencing greatness. We're now experiencing greatness. We're now experiencing greatness. Yeah, we're now experiencing.
Hello you sexy beasts, welcome back to War Thunder. This is a Chieftain Mk.3 main battle tank. It was recently introduced in patch 1.57 and sits at the end of the British medium tank line at a battle rating of 8.0, as such making for the top tier tank in the British tank line, alongside the Conqueror at the moment. The Chieftain Mk.3 is equipped with a 120mm gun, which can carry up to 53 rounds. On top of that, it also gets a 12.7mm coaxial gun, which can be used to range find. It has about the same muzzle velocity as your hash rounds, so can be used as such to range the distance to your enemy and effectively put hash rounds into said enemy. It also gets a 7.62mm coaxial machine gun, which is, well, not very useful, but can be used to spot enemy tanks in a hunch. By the way, the 12.7mm machine gun is fired with the same button as your main gun, so you can use it whilst you are reloading, and even if your radio operator or your commander die, you can still use the machine gun. The gun is very good, one of the best, if not the best in War Thunder actually. It has a 7.7 second reload time in my current configuration, with the gun fully, with the entire tank completely aced and the crew fully trained as well. 7.7 seconds on a 120mm gun, that's extremely fast. The fire rate of this thing is really good. The rest of the gun also has very good handling, with a 22.5 degree per second turret rotation speed, a vertical guidance of -10 to +20 degrees, and overall just very vertical guidance as well. Very good vertical acquisition speed. That's the word I was calling for. The thing is one of the best gun handling characteristics of any tank in the game. The engine of this tank is 750 horsepower, propelling the 54.4 ton tank to a top speed of 41 km/h. Now, the supposed power to weight ratio of this tank is 12 horsepower per ton, which is comparable to the King Tiger 105's 12.8 horsepower per ton. However, that is a lie, because this tank is rather sluggish. For some reason, the acceleration of this tank is absolutely horrible, and it loses its speed very easily when you're trying to turn your hull as well. Pretty much, you have to play it kind of like a heavy tank, because it does not have any kind of good mobility. The Geo traverse isn't very good. It is good in some situations, but if you're standing still or trying to even move a little bit, or driving backwards whilst turning the hull, it's going to be complicated. It's going to be quite complicated. Same thing with trying to get off the spot in a pinch. Backwards you can reach up to 9 km/h, but well, it's not the worst out there. I'm looking at you, Panther. But it's also not the best. Pretty much you have to think where you are going before going to the spot. Now over that side is a enemy tank. Our team has been pinging that side of the map. And it seems like there is a leopard. We are on one of the new web maps, by the way. I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but it's one of the new maps. Very snowy, very open areas, but still with lots of foresty areas on the outskirts of the map. This is actually a heaven for leopard drivers. It's pretty much the perfect hunting ground. They can flank around very easily, keep in cover, keep in concealment. There are little hills that they can use to hide their low profile tank and just wreck the enemy. Speaking of concealment, hold on. Can you see that? I'm sure there's something over there. I am sure there's something over there. Oh, bombs, run away! Okay, we're fine. I'm still sure there's something over there. I was using my binoculars and my sight to make out what it is. And it seems a bit like a tiger, but it can't be. Can it? Just in distance. Oh yeah, one shot kill. T-54 through the upper frontal glacis. And here's where we go to the ammo choices of this tank. You have a choice of 2 ammo types right from the start, you don't have to unlock any. You have the Sabo shell, which is extremely fast. It has a 1370 millimeters per second muzzle velocity. The round itself has 10 kilograms mass, and the bounce chances are 0 degrees at 24 degrees, 0% at 24 degrees, to 50% at 22 degrees, and 100% at 18 degrees. So anything over 18 degrees, you're going to bounce your shell. Notice very astonishing about this Sabo shell is the penetration of it. This is honestly one of the best rounds I have seen in War Thunder. At 10 meters, it gets 400 millimeters of penetration. Yes, that is heat post-war heat shells levels of penetration. And it also holds its penetration very well. At 2000 meters at 90-degree angle, it still holds 379 millimeters of penetration. This thing is a penetrating machine. But there are some problems. First off, Sabo shells do not have any explosive filler, so they rely on pure kinetic damage and flight path to damage the enemy. And that is a big problem in this game. Now I want you to pay attention to this engagement with what seems to be a T10M or an IS-4M actually. First shot goes into the side, second shot goes into the side again, and as you can see the spalling damage is not very good. That shot only took out the gunner and the commander. First shot does nothing. The third guy was already dead, and the entirety of the spalling was caught by his leg. And finally the last shot goes through the ammo and kills the gunner. You should note that the ammo did not explode actually. The thing about Sabo shells is you have to know where you are aiming, and even if you do, you don't do much damage with them. Sure, you're going to punch straight through the tank, but that's not always a good thing. Your damage potential is very limited by where you hit, and even if you do hit the right spots, the spalling that the shell causes is still very easily catched by anything. The fuel tanks, ammo racks, anything stops the spalling of this. And now with the new last man standing mechanics, where the tank is still alive if there's only one crew member left alive, you're going to have an even harder job to try to kill anything. Now we are facing off against 2A here, and I'm not too worried about the what seems to be an Ostwind or a Whirlwind on the right side. However, that ZSU-57-2 is scaring me. Now if you saw my ZSU-57-2 video before, that thing is a killing machine against leopards, and same thing against the Chieftain. I haven't talked about the armor yet. Let me quickly go over the armor of this thing. It has only 86 millimeters of armor on the frontal upper plate. Gladfully, that thing is sloped back quite a lot for an effective thickness of around 230 to 240 millimeters. Now, heat shells can still penetrate it, but APCR, Sabo, and even APHE shells are going to have trouble going through that upper glacis. The lower glacis, however, awful. 76 millimeters of armor. And even with the sloping, it only gets up to about 120 millimeters. Now as you notice in my engagement with that ZSU-57-2, first off, did you see how many rounds I had to put into that guy? Even with the HESH shell, your damage is very narrow. You have to know where you're shooting at, and you're unlikely going to get an enemy tank in a single shot. That's the big problem with the Chieftain, it's the ammo choices. The gun is excellent, the ammo choices not so much. It's the same thing with the Conqueror. If you've driven the Conqueror before, the tank itself is actually quite good, but since it only gets Sabo and heat shells, it's useless. It's not quite useless, but it's very hard to drive when you have a position that gets both APHE shells and heat shells. Stuff like the T10M, for example. That thing can bounce your shots due to extreme angling, and let's be honest, the Sabo shells are not very good against angled armor. I mean, at a 30-degree impact angle, your Sabo shell goes from 400 millimeters of penetration to 162. Yeah, it's that bad. Sabo shells, APCR shells, and so actually what is anti-BHE shells to a certain degree are not very good against angled armor. As I sadly had to find out against a Jagd Tiger there. As you can see, the turret armor is strong, but that Jagdtiger put a perfect shot into my turret ring, which is only about 250 millimeters thick. That's another point. The turret armor of the Chieftain Mk.3 is quite strong. It is very angled, very sloped, and it ranges between 125 to 250 millimeters. However, the turret ring is flat. The turret ring is perfectly flat at only 250 millimeters, so it's very easy to punch through that. And heat shells are also not going to have much trouble going through the sloped parts of your turret. Essentially, you have to drive this thing like a leopard that has worse ammo choices, less mobility. You have some kind of armor, you can bounce some shots, but don't count on it too much. It's a medium tank, it's not a heavy tank. You can bounce some shots, but they can penetrate you and they can wreck you. Taking out the attacker, going with the two 1000-pounder bombs. The Jagdtiger that killed me. Well, you could say I'm a bit vingative. I like my vengeance. But I don't know, man. I tried to play this Chieftain and I'm not going to say it's a bad tank. It's definitely not a bad tank, but at the same time it's not a very good tank either. There is nothing this tank does that other tanks don't do better. The Chieftain M, for example, has much better armor, much better mobility, and it gets access to APHE and HE and heat shells, which all are excellent. And even though the gun has a slow reload and not as good as of a handling, especially the gun depression is horrible on the Chieftain M, it's still more likely to get one-shot kills. And even if it doesn't get a one-shot kill, it's going to cripple you. Heat shells are nasty. Heat shells are extremely nasty. And even from the side, that thing can bounce shots. The turret is extremely well armored, the hull is extremely well armored, you have the weak point of lower glacis, but still, it's easy to hide. It's quite easy to hide. Then you have stuff like the Leopard, which is also classified as a medium tank. Okay, it has no armor, but that thing is fast. That thing is extremely fast. And once the gun isn't quite as big, it has about the same fire rate, but it gets heat shells. And that is the big problem with this gun. The Britons don't get post-war heat shells. And sadly, at top tier tank battles, if you don't have post-war heat shells, you're at a major disadvantage. Sure, your Sabo has a lot of penetration, but there's a low chance of setting ammo racks and fuel tanks on fire. It has very low... It has decent spalling, but the spalling is very easily soaked up by anything. Even the crew members. You saw that shot earlier, where the entirety of the spalling was caught by the leg of a dead crew member. And also the spalling is confined to a very narrow line, very narrow cone of fire. The hash shell isn't very much better either. The way hash shell works are it's unlike heat shells, not heat shells, sorry about that. Unlike the HE shells, which explode outwards and do damage on all sides, and depending on the caliber can actually punch through armor, for example through the bottom of the armor. Heat shells work differently. They have a fuse delay, which allows the shell to compress the explosive filler against the armor of the enemy tank, kind of like a pancake, imagine it, and then explodes, which sends a shockwave through the armor and creates spalling on the other side. But due to the current game mechanics of War Thunder, spalling it suffers of the same things of the Sabo shell. Sure, it has a wider cone than the Sabo shell, but at the same time, the spalling doesn't do much damage against fuel tanks or ammo racks, and it gets soaked up very easily. And not only that, the cone is a bit wider, but still not... It's nothing compared to an APHE shell. Honestly, if the Chieftain got an APHE shell or a heat shell, this thing would be absolutely awesome. It would actually be verging on overpowered. Sure, it isn't the best mobility, and the hull is very easily penetrable, even from the sides. I mean, the hull sides of this tank are only between 37 to 50 millimeters. I've seen light tanks with more armor than this thing. From the side, this thing is pretty much that. It gets some armor plates, you get some white tracks, you get some armored boxes, which is good against heat shells, but if they're firing anything like APHE, you're dead. You are dead. It's not very good for side scraping either. You have to worry about that. Pretty much try to cover your hull as much as possible. Just poke out your turret. Alright, now, in that engagement with the AA and trying to spot the enemy tanks, our attacker has been damaged quite heavily. So let's go back to base and let's jump into Chieftain yet again. Alright, second one Chieftain. Actually still the same game, but we'll just respawn again. Now, do you remember what I said about the Saber Shell not doing much damage? Yeah. That's an aircraft, and he's heading straight for me. I hit him, but... yep. Shit. And that's where the problems with the Chieftain lie. It's a good tank, but it gets held back by the mobility and the ammo choices. The gun is excellent. It just doesn't work with the ammo choices. So, what did we learn about the Chieftain Mk.3? Is it worth it? I would say yes. I would still say yes. You have to kind of play it like the Conqueror. You have good turret armor, but your hull is very, very, very weak. Anything can punch through your hull. That sounded a bit dirty. Anyways. The gun is extremely good. It has awesome muzzle velocity. The penetration over range of the Saber Shell is amazing as well. But you have to aim for flat surfaces and know where the enemy, crew and the models of the enemy tanks are. You pretty much have to be a surgeon with this tank. This is the definition of a sniper gun. You have to know where you hit, and you have to make sure that whatever you hit is flat. Anyways, this has been it for today. Thank you very much for watching. Now, if you did like this video, don't forget to leave a like rating, and if you disliked, don't forget to leave a dislike. If you're new around here, you can also subscribe to the channel. We're doing 3 videos a week now, and the next episode will be on... surprise? I actually don't know yet. I actually really don't know yet. Hopefully I can get it up by Monday, but we'll have to see. Anyways, my name has been MikeGoesBoom. Thank you very much for watching.